Hey class, welcome to week 12. This is going to be kind of a continuation of last week's lesson. Since week 11 was a little bit of a bait and switch. I told you guys we were going to be talking about statistics, and I had you reading philosophy and talking about hypothesis testing. I know, cruel and unusual. So this week I am going to hold up to my promise, and we're going to actually talk about some specific statistical tests. So we kind of talked a little bit about why is it important for a counselor to know statistics. It's a valid question. And it's not so much so you can do them, although I am absolutely 100% supportive of any of you guys doing research in the future. But really more for you guys to understand the results chapter of scientific literature, which is really a very meaty chapter, one that a lot of people kind of tap dance through. It's like the haunted forest of scientific papers. But it's very important for you to read the results because although the discussion provides you with an interpretation based on the research team's kind of beliefs and findings and what they felt about the results, you know, it's just really good practice for you to read the results yourself and see if you come to the same conclusions. Generally papers are peer-reviewed and editors aren't going to let you get away with anything that's straight wrong. So there's not going to be necessarily an issue of inaccuracy, but maybe you just don't feel as though the results or the effects were as strong as the research team says they were. It might be the difference between you going ahead and implementing a new treatment modality in the way that you treat your patients, or it may be, the difference between you saying that you might wait and just see if a few more studies come out that support it. I want to give you guys the ability to make those decisions for yourselves and really kind of be the best professionals that you can be when it comes to evidence-based practice. So, with that being said, this week you're going to go over a few kind of standard tests, more common tests, pretty simple. So you're going to kind of learn about them, kind of go through. And then the fun part for your discussion this week, you're going to do something very similar to what you did back in, I think it was like week 6, when you were first looking at quantitative research. You guys put together your own research design. And I really enjoyed your work on that. I'd really like you guys to now kind of channel that creativity and that technical prowess, and I want you guys to now put together a study that incorporates the statistical analyses that you would use. So it just kind of dives a little bit deeper. You don't have to use the same topics that you guys used back in week 6 or week 5, whichever week it was. You can use new topics, but you're going to come up with a hypothesis, both alternative and null. You're going to come up with a study design like you did before. It's got to be quantitative. That's the difference between quantitative and qualitative is the statistics. You're going to operationally define your variables. A few of you guys struggled with that earlier, so I want you guys to make sure it's got to be specific enough that any Joe Schmo off the street can pick up your research design and measure it exactly the same way you did. So make sure that you're nice and clear, nice and specific on measuring some of those things. You're going to show the groups of the independent variable. You're going to talk about those. Again, something you've already kind of done with research design. And then you're going to look now into some new stuff. Are the comparisons within groups? Are you measuring the same people over and over again? Or are they between groups? Are you measuring 2 different groups of people and seeing if they're different on the same thing? So for example, if I wanted to measure whether or not going to comic book conventions made somebody buy more comic books, I would probably do a pretest of how many comic books somebody had and then, maybe randomly assign them to a group that went to comic book conventions throughout the year. Maybe they went to 3 of them, and a group that went to 0, and then a post-test of how many comic books they had at the end of the year, right? So that's my design. Well, that would be both between and within, right? Because you're looking at the difference between 2 groups. You're also looking at a pre-post of people with themselves. So kind of consider those things whenever you're looking at it, but essentially within subjects means that you're testing them multiple times, like a pre-post. Between subjects means you have 2 different groups and somebody cannot be in the same group at the same time. Then you're going to choose your statistical procedure based on all of these details that you've laid out, which should be fairly simple. Using your text in this lesson, you should have all the information you need. That's actually kind of the easy part, is once you've laid all this down, you just kind of have to go through and say, all right, which test am I using? Very similar to laying out all of your design specifications back earlier in the quantitative design chapter, where you laid out your hypothesis and your variables and how you were measuring them. And then it was really just a matter of picking from a list which one was most appropriate. Kind of the same basic thing here. So I loved your guys' research projects earlier. I'm really excited to read about these. If you have any questions at all, as always, questions for the instructor is always open. You can always send me an email. You're also welcome to, if you think you think you've got it down, but you just kind of want some help before you post it, you're always welcome also to post, especially with these more complicated posts. Shoot me what you've got. If you want me to kind of take a look at it and give you some feedback, I'm more than happy to do that. Like I said, if you feel like you might have it, or if you're just really stuck on this one part, it's okay if you want to email me in advance instead of just waiting for my feedback afterwards. So I hope you guys have a great week. I hope you enjoy this lesson. This is a really exciting lesson for me. This is like my absolute favorite part of science, is being able to measure and quantify things. So I always kind of geek out at this part. And I will see you guys next week.